Okay, so good evening, everyone who is here. We're going to continue with the questions and answers that were, the questions anyway, that were sent in. We have a lot of them, so I will try to go through them a little bit quickly to give something very precise and to the point. So the first was about energy channels, chakras, and Dzogchen. This is a way of dealing with the sense that we have that our body is a thing in a world of things. So we have a sense inside our body, there are a lot of different things: heart, lungs, intestines, and so on. So we see the body as an entity which is full of sub-entities. So, but the vision of the body through the channels and the energy that moves, the breath or the prana, is different. So we have the central channel, which is empty, and it's always empty. And we have two side channels, the solar and the lunar, and coming out from them, we have many different tiny pathways of energy running through the body. And so by focusing on breathing, we have a sense of the energy moving through the different channels. So there are two moves. The first is to gather all the energy from the sub-channels into the side channels and then into the central channel, which is empty. And then from the central canal, coming back and spreading out through all the canals in the body, but with the sense of the inseparability of the movement of the prana and the openness of its ground, which is this avaduti, empty central channel. This is both an energetic and a symbolic way of seeing the meaning of Dzogchen. Dzogchen means the great whole, the undivided, which is another way of saying non-dual. When you have two things, they are separate, they stand in opposition to each other. So we can put stillness and movement into opposition. But when the prana is moving and we feel the aliveness of the body, this is the movement of stillness. When the movement is inside the central channel, it doesn't cause any trouble. Just as when the movement of the mind is occurring inside emptiness, there is no karma. Karma begins when you have a subject and an object. I want to do this to you. I want to take this from you. So when the mind itself, rigpa, empty awareness, is the ground of our presence, this is the basis of how we are, there is no subject and object differentiation to lead to the accumulation of tendencies, which is the meaning of karma. Tendency is the echo or the reverberation of the past into the present. But in Dzogchen, when they talk of Lundrup, it means instant arising of this moment, and it comes all together fresh. The three times have no independent basis. They are just a movement of structuring within the instant infinity of immediate presence, Lundrup. So the idea of the, sorry, so the idea of the channels and the energy and the chakras, which I won't explore just now, it's exactly the meaning of not separating movement from stillness. So then there is a question, a little bit intellectual. If subject and object operate through language, and this mediates our experience, how is it for animals and beings in other realms? And how was it before language developed? Each dimension has its own pathways of communication. On the television, we can see nature programs where we see shoals of small fish turning and moving together. They're not, nobody's sending them some special message, but somehow they find themselves moving together. Because a sentient being means having a mind. Whatever realm we're in, we have sensibility. We have sense organs of some kind. That means every living creature is in an environment and is part of an environment. Well, this relates to what we looked at before. Non-duality means there are no isolated individuals complete in themselves. The only complete thing is the great completion, which is everything. So in our incompleteness, we are in communication with the environment. Energy is moving with energy. And there are two main modes of this. There is desire and aversion. We have desire for safety, for food, for sex and reproduction, and so on. And we have aversion to danger, suffering, anxiety, and so on. So we engage with the environment looking to get more of what we like, looking to get less of what we don't like. With our own eyes every day, we can see that birds do this, squirrels do this, dogs do this, cats do this. So language is the particular and particularly sophisticated quality of communication that human beings have, but all beings in the different realms have their own modalities of communication. Generally speaking, in the 6 realms, it's best to be born with a human body, because then we can avail ourselves of this 3rd level of transmission, which is through our ears, through hearing Dharma instructions and so on. The 1st level of transmission of the Buddha's mind, which is direct, that's available for all creatures in samsara. All sentient beings have awareness, but it's covered for them by their intoxication with thoughts, feelings, sensations, and so on. Therefore, the 1st level of transmission, which is the instant openness of the mind, although the door is always open, we can't find the door because we are looking for this and looking for that. And in the same way, the symbolic transmission is also available, particularly through nature, the clouds in the sky, the rainbow, light shining through a drop of water hanging after the rain. Out of clear light comes 5-colored light, rainbow light. This diversification of light and the unity or the unitary structure of light is not in opposition. Neither one nor many, you have the diversity of emptiness. Every day this is displayed for us thousands of times, but we don't see it. That's why we have Dharma teachings, whose function is to help us think less and see more. And how was it before language developed? Well, the structure of Dharma understanding is not inside a Darwinian evolutionary system. As far as we know, dinosaurs managed to eat and to fuck. So they managed the basics without our kind of language. Desire and aversion are at the basis of every form of life. So the main thing is for us to look and see, what do we do with language? When we speak, the words are dissolving. Silence, sound, silence. Oh, this is the movement of words in time. But with our addiction to concepts, it is as if we can pull sound out of time and solidify it as a memory and structures of cognitive relatedness. We are thinking about thoughts. You can take a little glass, if you have one in your house, and just flick the edge of it so it goes ding. Open yourself fully to the sound as sound. What is there to think about in the sound? Oh, this sound, this glass makes a different sound from that glass. In that moment, you're thinking about your concept of this sound in relation to your concept of that sound. Sound is always vanishing. If you stay with the immediacy of the sound, you have immediate connection and the dissolution of the medium of connection. And in that way, gradually you're free to use language without being used by it. So now another question. If everything is the play of the mind, how does the ego fabricate things? And what occurs when that stops? So this is really a question about perception. Wherever you're sitting just now, you can look around the room, you see many things. Now, as some of us have done many times, we have to become aware that we don't see things at all. We think the world full of things. The thingness of things arises with the thought of the thing. So through our senses, we can judge smooth surfaces, rough surfaces, heavy objects, light objects, and so on. These are all concepts. You have to keep looking for yourself. Oh, what I call a chair. This is the application of the idea of chair to the object. Small children relate to chairs as something to hide under, or hide under the table. They're drawn to the idea of entering into spaces that big people can't go into. That is to say, that space registers as something unique and specific for them. That kind of space is usually pretty invisible for us as adults. The small child is exploring the world through their body, and their imagination can work with that to transform it into many different experiences. But when we arrive at the conclusion a chair is a chair, a table is a table, then we have the solidity of the concept. So this is how the ego is fabricating objects. Just as someone working in the factory fabricates or makes a chair, taking pieces of wood or metal and putting them in a shape, in the same way, our mind is fabricating our sense of what the chair means to me. That is to say that as soon as our eye sees this particular object, our interpretive associations, which are aesthetic, economic, historical, emotional, gather round and wrap the object of direct perception in this interpretive matrix. That is to say, we think that in terms of our culture, we think we are adding value to the object by being able to make associations with it and about it. But actually, we're adding a lot which is perhaps unnecessary. What we are adding is solidity, the sense of an inherent existence. If we look at a simple wooden chair, we see how different pieces of wood have been shaped and put together. Some holes are drilled and others are shaped so it slots in, and the chair can be there without any nails in it if it's well made. It settles. It is clearly a composite, and yet we think it's a chair. As a chair, it's self-existing. It's just a chair. So when the mind settles into the chair as chair, this object, the chair, is cut off from the flow of its existence in time. The chair has a beginning, a middle, and an end. At some time, it will no longer be wanted. Then it might be put into the fire. Its status has been diminished. Once it was my precious chair, now it's firewood. This is my concept. I am attributing value to this object. So this is very helpful to keep looking at these entities in the world, what you take to be something existing in itself, and see that in fact it is a creation. It has come together by the meeting and functioning together of different forces, material forces, that is to say, forces of the 5 elements, and mental forces. And the more we do that, then we see, oh, my mind is inseparable from my experience. When I allow the movement of my mind to relax, I have less and less interpretation of events. Then the events show themselves in their naked simplicity. We see light, we hear sound. The patterns of light hover halfway between being aspects of clear light and being indicators of truly existing objects. All colors come from clear light. And yet we take these differentiated colors to be indicators of some substance behind them. The blue car, the black wall. But we don't see a black wall. We see a shape of black. So in this way, if we want to practice in Dzogchen, we have to get to know what we are up to, how we cheat ourselves and other people by the intensity of our belief that there are real objects out there and a real self inside. So for the second part of the question, what is there when the interpretations cease? Then you enter the realm beyond speech and thought. Our world is built out of speech and thought. But the revelation of the Buddha mind is not built of thought or description. Okay, so the next question is it helpful to consider Kadag as absolute truth and Lundrup as relative truth? Okay, so Kadag means primordial purity. It is the empty nature of the mind itself. The absolute truth is the how it isness, which is not constructed out of thought and interpretation. So on one level, you could say they are the same, but they are just words. So if you get into studying Dharma, you will find that there are many, many styles of interpretation and patterns and technical terms. So how does this relate to that? So on the one hand, we have this view, this word Kadag, and on the other hand, we have this other term, absolute truth. No, one hand and the other hand. So you can try this yourself. You have two hands, hopefully. So you put out your hands, and then you trace how it's going up from the hand, up your arm, through the elbow, and across your chest, and out down the other hand. Oh, what's in the middle? The heart chakra, the site of awareness. So when you think, is this the same as that? Remember, this is passing through the heart. Start with the heart. Start with awareness. Then all these binary oppositions or differentiated terminologies will not go into similarities and difference, but they're just the effulgence of awareness itself. So now another question, how to keep deepening direct experience so that we move from intellectual comprehension to lived presence? This is a very interesting question, but it's framed in a way which makes it difficult. Because if we ask how to do this, how to make this happen, then we're looking for a method. Who is going to apply the method? How to make a cup of tea. If you follow the method, you find you have a cup of tea. Who made the cup of tea? I did, following the right method. So even someone as stupid as me can make a cup of tea if I follow the right method. I am augmented in my value by the wonderful quality of the methods I use. You can learn to drive a car. Then you can have this piece of metal going at 150 kilometers an hour down a road. You are driving. You have agency. You have the will to power. So here you have three factors meeting together. The fact that you can drive, the fact that there is a car, and the fact that you're driving it. Who is doing this? Me. So this is always the problem of the method. In the path of Dzogchen, we are trying to see the natural or intrinsic dissolving of the ego self, which claims to be the one who does it. We observe how, when we walk, there is walking. What is revealed is walking. The interpretation is, I am walking. I am the doing of the walking. But that's clearly a lie, because we can walk without thinking about walking. Walking is the relation of our body in its vertical mode with the environment. So when we say my body, this is not defining an isolated island of meanness, but the revelation, oh, here, moving, whoa, walking, allows the commentary, I am walking. Look at me, mommy, I can walk. But who is walking? Walking is walking. Speaking is speaking. Eating is eating. Agency is an unnecessary additional interpretation of the movement of energy. So I, James, am walking, I am doing this, I am doing that. This is a sign that the prana, the life energy, the vitality of the possibility of the potential of this moment is trapped in the small pathways in the nadi. If you bring the energy into the central channel, then you see emptiness is walking, or the ungraspable is walking, the inexplicable is walking. I am unsayable, because the words cannot refer to the immediacy of this moment of direct experience. It is through interpretation after the fact that the deluded notion of the individual ego is maintained. So, if you want a lived experience to deepen or get bigger or not be so fragile, give yourself a holiday. Don't try so hard. Don't try to understand what is going on, but stay relaxed. Here, something's going on. There is showing. The showing is revealed within this field of luminosity. The less you interpret and the less you mobilize yourself as the doer of the deed, you find that it just happens. And this is the meaning of Lundrup. It gets translated in different ways. It could be effortlessly arising or arrives fully formed. It indicates not built up step by step, not compounded, not a gathering and shaping of pre-existing resources. It is. And if it is, it doesn't need you to make it. Your mind was there before your body was born. Your awareness has clarity before the thought arises in your mind. So we have to be careful. This image or metaphor of agency, the will to power, the capacity to dominate and control is ever increasing in its dominance in our psyche at this time. You can conquer Mount Everest, go to Mars and conquer outer space. This delusion of mastery reinstalls again and again the seeming primacy of the ego. Due to causes and conditions, people develop rockets that can go into space. It goes up and maybe it comes back a few times and then it's on the scrap heap. It's worn out. It's compounded. A creation. The mind is not a creation. Awareness is intrinsic. All the knowledge you have is compounded. Learning to speak with your parents, learning to read and write in school, all that this wonderful mountain of knowledge you have established will vanish. How to always belongs to knowledge. Awareness is not a how to, it's how it is. So if you want to deepen your experience, just stay how it is. So then there is a question about Vipassana practice, or lagtong in Tibetan, in the style taught by Goenka, and its use in Dzogchen. So the Theravadan model that was taught by Goenka is concerned with allowing the impermanence of sensation to show itself without being wrapped in interpretation. So by stabilizing focused attention in the first stage, shamatha means making things calm, then this calming, which is a non-reactivity, by developing the focused attention of the sensation of the breath at the nostrils, you become able not to be distracted by other things that are going on. And you apply that to scanning up and down through the body. Now, when you're doing the focus on the breath, you don't want to be distracted by other thoughts or sounds outside. You have a stable focus for your attention. As you scan through the body, you don't have a stable focus for your attention. You're allowing whatever shows itself in that moment to be received. Then, by not elaborating what occurs, you see the very, very finite, simple potential of experience. So you're stopping attachment to the second, third, and fourth of the 5 skandhas. So you have a simplicity of form. There's some kind of showing. The advantage of this is that the mind becomes quite peaceful and clear. The difficulty with it is that it is it's a retreat kind of practice. When you get up from your meditation, you go into a busy world. You're called upon to respond to people. You don't know what they're going to say. You don't know what their mood is going to be. So you find yourself like this or like that. And this kind of practice doesn't fit well with a turbulent life. So in Dzogchen, the meaning of Vipassana is to release oneself from reliance on the tools of thinking. Thoughts arise and pass and so on, but while you're sitting, you don't need to use them. Not merging into identification with what is occurring, nor separating from it, but being with it, present with whatever is occurring. Who is present? Presence is present. Presence is not a person. Awareness is not an aspect of personality. It's not a quality that you have. It is the illumination whereby what you see as the movement of your life energy is revealed. So it's got no agenda. It's not employed for any function. And it's not a method. Awareness is not a method. Awareness is, and you can be present with it or not. If you get distracted and you get involved in the distraction, then you're absent, you're not present. It is awareness which is illuminating your distraction. So if you want to be not distracted, you simply have to be aware that you are distracted, and then you're back with awareness. However, this is not the same as being conscious of being distracted. It's not that, oh no, I am distracted, I have to bring myself back to there. This is the discourse of the ego. And the ego doesn't do Dzogchen. It does self-referencing. It's self-reflexive. It's always is concerned with, I am the reference point. I am the reference point. So if you're doing Theravada and Vipassana, there is the sense, I am the one doing the practice. In Dzogchen, there is just sitting. The more you sit, you don't need to know who is sitting. Who is sitting is a description of the undescribable. Who is sitting? I am sitting. Who are you? When you look, what do you find? No one is sitting. And I am sitting. These two are not oppositional. When I am really sitting, simply sitting, no one is sitting. And in that moment, knowing that I am not sitting and that I am sitting has no conflict. So in the Dzogchen sense, Vipassana means unobscured or unobstructed awareness. So you can do both of these styles of practice if you want. The main thing is to see how they are structurally different. If you've had a difficult day and you're a bit upset and tired, and your mind is revolving around the question, why is my boss? So my boss is giving me trouble. So in that situation, when your reflection is very dualistic in its way of unfolding, and it's a bit obsessional and jumbled at the same time, then doing this more Theravadan style can be quite useful. Now I have something simple to do. You could start with focus on the breath. You could also mindfully peel potatoes. And then at least at the end of the meditation, you're halfway to having your dinner. But you're giving yourself a simple activity to do because you feel you can't sort it out. But you're trapped in the sense that you have to sort it out. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do about my boss. In that state, you don't even recognize this is a thought. You're feeling the deep meaning and the truth and the necessity of revisiting this problem again and again. Well, in that state, most probably, if you're just beginning, just doing open sitting will not be very helpful. When we practice together, we do this Guru Yoga of the White R in order to commence the sitting with space, to dissolve the frames of reference and identification. So if you're caught up in a lot of whirly stuff, it's more difficult. Then there's another question which relates to this. Are there aspects of Dzogchen compatible with other practices of different vehicles? And again, what is particularly interesting in the question is how it's structured. Are there aspects of Dzogchen, so Dzogchen has aspects, compatible with the practices of different vehicles? This is to take Dzogchen as a thing among things. If you go to university, you can study many different topics. But say what you want to study is life. Someone might say, oh, you have to study biology. No, I don't want to think about life. I want to study life. I'm alive, I want to study life. In the university, we always study something. We think about something, we learn about something. But knowing about life won't help me live. So Dzogchen is life. We don't study about Dzogchen, we enter Dzogchen. So it's not about doing a bit of Dzogchen and a bit of something else. Dzogchen is the main dish, which is what is life? What is the mind? Who am I? So these are all ways of not thinking about, but trying to get in harmony with the immediacy of oneself, moment by moment, as one emerges in the flow of experience. It is about giving yourself to Dzogchen, because Dzogchen is the ground or the basis from which you are emerging and within which you remain. So it's better to start with Dzogchen. And if you want to make use of aspects of other Dharma paths, you can do that, if you know how to use them and why you might use them. So, for example, you might have a somewhat anxious, worrying disposition and feel that you are a bad person. You might feel that your mind is obscured and you have a lot of negative thoughts, and so you should do purification practice. So you might decide that you're going to do a lot of mantra of Vajrasattva. And when you do the mantra, then you have the sense that this purifying liquid, the dutsi is flowing from Vajrasattva's body into your body and washing out all the toxins, all the negativity. But then the next day you find yourself full of negative thoughts. So now you have a problem. What is happening is that you feel that you are self-filling with shit. Without any effort, your mind is filling with guilty, negative thoughts. But when you do the Vajrasattva practice, you have to try to make the purity happen. So the problem then is my badness is somehow intrinsic, and the purification is external and depends on effort. This is very far from the view of Dzogchen. The mind from the very beginning is pure. Whose mind? Your mind. All minds. So this is the basis. This is Kadag, primordial purity. This means the mind has never been defiled or touched or contaminated or limited in any way. So what is to be purified? What we experience is the movement of the mind. Thoughts, feelings, sensations, memories, regrets. This is arising moment by moment from the pure ground. As the texts say, if you go to a land of gold, you only find gold. The ground is pure. What it shows is pure. There is no duality. There is no impure to mark the pure. The integrity or the completeness of Dzogchen indicates everything is forever connected with the pure ground. Everything is pure. So rather than trying to purify your mind, the issue is not to enter into dualistic judgment, which creates an illusory veil which hides the natural luminosity or transparency of whatever is occurring. There is nothing to purify. But I feel I've done bad things in my life. I regret that I was not more kind to some people in the past. I did these things. The fact that I did them is a sign that there is something wrong with me. This is how it feels to the ego. But what is that accusation of one's own wrongness or badness? It is a flow of energy, and the energy is interpreted according to habit formations. Before the interpretation is applied, what is it? So, just now, when I hear Juan's voice speaking, I hear sound and emptiness. I don't know Spanish. I don't know what he's saying. I just hear sound. Sound arises and passes. If I knew Spanish, I could get the key to the prison of Spanish language, live inside that little locked room, because I live in the locked room of English. If I hear people speaking English, they are talking meaning. If you don't know English, it's not meaningful. It's just sound. The sound is primary. And the conceptual interpretation based on pre-existing knowledge, this is secondary. So we know if you do Tantra, we say all sound is mantra. Mantra protects the mind by putting a Teflon seal over it so that the conceptual linking out to dualistic meaning is less powerful. All sound is sound and emptiness. This is the speech of Padmasambhava. It's meaningful because it is the voice of the ground. So this is the heart of purification as an example. When you see everything arises from the ground, it is intrinsically pure. When you realize that you arise from the ground, you are intrinsically pure. But I'm a bad person. I do bad things. That sounds as if I am a self-existing entity. I'm just me. But I am the effulgence of the ground. But why would the pure ground give rise to impure James Lowe? If the pure ground is pure, why would it give rise to all these crappy people in this world? So we're back with the question, how is the world before the mind moves? It is our own addiction to interpretation which obscures the natural luminosity of each moment of life. But it's important to directly taste this. Knowing about Dzogchen is no better than knowing about Italian movies. Living Dzogchen, now that has value, but concepts about it is not worth very much. So it's very clear. First comes primordial purity. Try to find your mind. Does it have shape, color, size? Does it come from somewhere? Does it stay? Does it go? When you see for yourself, this mind, my mind, the basis of me is not a thing. I am not a thing. I am movement in the field of movement. Then how could we be intrinsically bad? All limitation is contingent. It arises due to circumstances. And that is to say, the movement of the mind in its patterns creates something. So when you play with children and maybe they're lying in bed and you have a little lamp that shines on the wall, you can put your fingers in different shapes so that the shadow becomes a rabbit or a bird. And the children see, oh, look, it's a rabbit. Nothing is there, it's a shadow. There's no substance. But the child is learning to conceptualize. And although there's clearly no rabbit, there is a rabbit. So in that moment, you see, oh, this is the mind cheating itself. The simplicity of the shadow shape is self-dissolving. It has no substance. But when we apprehend it, when we take hold of it through our concept, there seems to be something. So if you can see shadow is shadow, then there is purification. But if you are convinced it's a rabbit, then you have to do December. So it's like that. So the main thing is go to the center first, find how is the mind, stay with the mind, and then if you need some supportive practice, you can employ it. But if you don't do the first thing first, then all these secondary practices, when they are made first, will give you a lot of headaches. Okay, so now we come to the end of our time for this evening. We have another meeting in 2 weeks' time. We have many, many questions, so this might be a long journey together, but hopefully it's of some interest to you and maybe helpful with your practice. So thank you to Juan and Milton and Zhao and Pedro. And there'll be a recording of this available, so you can listen again or share it with some other people if you wish. So I wish you good practice, and if you like, we meet again in a couple of weeks. Okay, so bye for now.
James.
James. Bye.